I'll give credit to Caleb Giddings on this, as he came up with this sort of youth thing for where J-frames fit, and I shared it on our Facebook thing because it was so good, is for the extreme novice people who we just don't want them to shoot themselves. Is a lot of these snubs are really good compared to giving them a small semi-auto. You give them a small J-frame that they aren't going to really hurt themselves with, hopefully. And as their experience and training gets up, they have less and less of a need for that. And then as their training and experience goes up, they start to become the expert's gun. And you start talking to a lot of serious, people who have devoted their entire lives to doing this. And, a lot of them are going to be real proficient with snub revolvers because you found a lot of useful. Back in the old days when, where real shooters carried full steel Colt 1911s, matter of fact, I think I saw Chris do that guy at SHOT Show last year. Those guys, they were, my 1911 carried in a Milt Sparks, okay, those are my people. And, and the reality, you used to go talk to them, and it's like after a class, they all got a J-frame on. Nobody's got the 41-ounce steel 1911. I tried that for a while of doing my Milt Sparks 1AT, 2 mag pouches, rolling that off duty in Southern California. That didn't last real long before it's like I look like an idiot in my, either cut off sleeve flannel shirt or fishing vest in Southern California in the summer. You just look like a moron trying to cover all this stuff. So, we learned, but the small snubs they are a great size efficient tool for a non-permissive environment option. And, I'm going to quote Cecil Birch again, one of the things is go get a real job. Go to work like I did for a while, where if you're found with a weapon, you're immediately terminated. I was retired, so I didn't give a crap if I got terminated. And I looked at them straight in the face, and I'd say, I do not have a gun. Because I got asked all the time, do you carry a gun? No, I do not have a gun. I had 2 guns, so I wasn't really lying. I really worded that specifically. But should have anybody saw or figured that out, I was done. And there's a lot of people in our circles who do have a real job, where if you're found with a firearm in a working environment, you're done. And you're never going to get another job, because that's going to, when they call your previous employer and you got terminated for having a firearm at work, well, all of a sudden a little tiny airweight revolver in smart carry or some deep concealment rig starts to make a whole lot of sense. That at least and then when you go to your car, grab your, in my case, grab your fanny pack full of death and, load up for the drive home. But at least while you're at work or in this environment, you can at least be armed. And a lot of people aren't going to, in a manner that's not going to, in a very low profile manner. That is true real concealed carry, where, to me, there's 2 kinds of concealed carry. There's sort of off-duty cop concealed carry, where I don't care if you can, my gun's printing. I look like I got a colostomy bag. I'm under my cop, bad cop, no donut t-shirt. Okay, I got a badge that goes with this. I don't care, and I carried that way for a long time. I carried big guns, and I was a king of the gigantic. Now I'm old enough where the fanny pack makes me just look old. When I was younger, it was, that was just, it's an off-duty cop with a gun. Okay, and then there's people who go to work in the real work environment every day who cannot carry a firearm at work. My wife is in that boat right now. Because, you need this, you need that, and stuff. It's like, she works in an environment you cannot, if they see you with a weapon, you are gone, period. And, so you have to comply with that. Or if you are not going to comply with that, you better have your stuff. It better be deep, and so that's where these things really fit in there. Great Rule 1 guns are great for have a gun when you can't have a gun. Think about travel. Again, you get diverted into New Jersey. I don't care what badge. You get diverted in New York. Go get diverted into Chicago. Go fly to Chicago. Go look at how many vacation flights you're going to the one place on earth I despise more than anything and will never go to again. If like pilot, you're turning the plane around. We're not going to Newark. Under no circumstances do I ever want to visit the Newark airport ever again in my life. So again, think about going to those places. Think about what it's going to be like for you in California today. Well, would you rather have a snub with wad cutters where you have a gun and aren't going to go to jail for the sheer administrative crime of having a gun, or are you going to take your comped, optically sighted 20-round magazine blaster of death and just being found with a gun, you're going to jail? Take your pick. All of a sudden, these things start becoming, in today's world, I like living in Texas. I don't like leaving Texas, but every so often, I have a life and I have to. Or sometimes the phone rings and, hey, you need to be in Chicago in the morning. Okay. Want to go to Chicago in the morning, I'm carrying 2 revolvers. Okay. What do you got to do? So, you think about that. So being proficient with both is a good thing.